So I'm a little rusty. We are not here to talk about Star Wars: The Force Awakens, right?
Last time I checked.
All right. That's a first for me this week. All right, welcome travelers, duplicates, and Daleks to the 103rd presentation of an Unearthly Podcast, streaming live on the 22nd of April 2015, and featuring The Chase, written by Terry Nation, a name that you might be getting tired of by next week. I am Bill Sylvia, the Man in Black, and with me are Mad Matt Winchell,
Hello.
Randy Ronson McCulloch,
Always a pleasure.
and Aaron Romeo Moon Burke. Tim is working on a
Hello.
presentation of Evita. I'm sorry, I talked over you saying hello.
Oh, sorry.
Tim is working on a presentation of Evita and asks for Argentina not to cry for him.
So, quickly, Bill, how was the Star Wars convention in Anaheim?
It was a really good week. I actually missed out on all of the Rebels panels I intended to go to, but I did check out Marvel, Del Rey, some of the continuity stuff, and of course the opening Thursday morning Force Awakens panel. J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy bought us all pizza. I'm sure it was all over the internet.
Hmm.
Everybody was asking us about it all weekend.
I hear Harrison Ford's appearance pretty much got like a standing ovation.
Oh, from the trailer, yes.
Yeah.
He showed up on the trailer, and everyone blew up.
Yeah. Well, I must admit,
That even happened when they reshowed the trailer during the Mark Hamill panel, which I wonder if that might have made Mark feel a little jealous. But
only that he's not in the trailer.
Well,
I
isn't
mean,
that his voice?
At
technically,
least from what we've seen.
his voice and his 1983 voice are, but his face aren't.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. Harrison Ford looks to have been able to recapture the Han Solo look well.
Quite
We'll
well, yes.
we'll wait to see about the others.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we're going to move on to news here because we've got a lot of news.
Last week was
Too
fun.
much.
This week
unlike
is way too damn
unlike-
busy.
Unlike last week where we had to, scrounge the dark corners of the internet to bring up news, this week it all fell in our lap, and we're going to start with birthdays. Starting, of course, with a Doctor birthday. Saturday was the birthday of 10th Doctor David Tennant, who turned 44 years old. Tennant is, of course, just getting off the second season of Broadchurch on ITV in England and on BBC America, if I recall.
I think it's airing on BBC America, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
The
Yeah,
American
it is.
Intensive spin-off has gone under.
Is
That
is
one died.
gone, but yeah, he's just come off Broadchurch and is currently working on some movies and a couple of other minor TV shows. Broadchurch has been renewed for a third season.
Woo.
So take it away, Aaron. I need
Aw.
water.
Someone has a David Tennant cat. Pusheen. Anyway, so it is Camille Cadori's birthday today. Well, not quite today. She was 50 years old on April 18th.
That's Saturday.
Yep, Saturday. She plays as Rose's mom, Jackie, from the new Who series. So, happy birthday to you, Camille.
And while I was celebrating a friend's 21st birthday on Monday the 20th, Louise Jameson had her 64th birthday. So happy birthday, Leela. Of the 17.
And finally, for Doctor Who birthdays, our latest master or mistress, Michelle Gomez, has turned 49 just yesterday. Happy birthday, Michelle.
I've been in a convention too long. Every time someone ends a sentence, my hands want to clap.
My hands, they're shaking.
Okay.
Right. Also, in other recent birthdays, we have had George Takei has turned 78.
Ooh, my.
Veteran of many sci-fi franchises, including Star Trek. Dreamboat Hayden Christensen of Star Wars Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith has turned 34. Man, he's getting old.
So he grew another ring.
He only gets more angelic as he ages. Otherwise, Chloe Bennett of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is turning 23.
I think you said, Bill, that technically makes her younger than her character.
Yeah, because I think her character was born in '89. I think Sky is 26, which is interesting because normally 23-year-olds play 16-year-olds on television.
Something like that.
Yeah. Take a look at Anya Stark, who's going to be in Doctor Who. We mentioned last week. She's 18 years old, and her character in Game of Thrones is like, what, 10, 12, something like that?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like 12, yeah.
On to our actual Doctor Who news. We did get some publicity images of a monster from the third filming block, which are filming in South Wales. There was initially a pretty dark photo, and the BBC gave us a little more brightly lit one, but it doesn't really tell us anything about the episode.
Oh, come on, Bill. It's a robot in medieval armor.
It's a big daddy.
Let's just move on. Okay. So, according to WikiLeaks, Sony and the BBC have been in talks to produce a Doctor Who motion picture. Neither Sony or the BBC has responded to the Pacific leaks. Sony has strongly condemned the release of material by WikiLeaks, saying, "We vehemently disagree with WikiLeaks' assertion that this material belongs in the public domain." WikiLeaks is well known for stealing and releasing information. And this may actually wind up stalling such a plan. We'll have to see where this goes out, but I'm actually with Sony on this. I think WikiLeaks should not have captured this information.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's premature to even try and say anything's going to happen with it anyway, so, meh.
All right, let's go ahead and go on to the general Doctor Who news.
That would be Aaron.
Christopher Eccleston, where did I have that? Hang on. I must find my interview.
Oh, I didn't include the link in the breakdown I sent you. I'm
right.
sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so what we were trying to point out is that Christopher Eccleston has recently done an interview with
Loose Ends.
Loose Ends, yes. He has recently done an interview with Loose Ends, coming clean about why he left Doctor Who so early in his career as the Doctor. He is quoted as saying, "I think I overpitched the comedy. If I had my time again, I would do the comedy very differently." He said he did very well the tortured stuff. I believe also in the interview he kind of wanted to gear more towards children's television instead of just the serious stuff that he was always doing.
I've put the link in the chat if you want to put that on screen if you don't have it already.
Okay. I've actually read the interview, so for example, that whole thing about being on children's television, but one thing that kind of stuck out to me is that he said he was there in spirit, along with all the other subsequent doctors that followed him. He said, "Myself and 3 individuals at the very top of the pyramid clashed, so off I went. But they're not here to say their side of it, so I'm not going to go into details." So it sounds like he doesn't want to get himself too much trouble there.
Well, I think I can interpret this as saying he wanted to do something more lighthearted, and Russell T. Davies and Julie Gardner and probably one of the head writers at the time all wanted him to do the dark tortured bit. So eventually he just got fed up with it and said, "Okay, I'm done." That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, and a lot of the times creative differences is what drives people, away from jobs and stuff like that. So.
Well, I think it was partially because he knew he was getting typecast.
At least he didn't have to. At least he didn't have to wear a rainbow coat.
True. Okay, let's move on. Bill.
Yep. We have a book announcement in that Lethbridge Stewart, The Schizoid Earth by David A. McKinty, who, among other things, for Virgin, BBC, and Big Finish, wrote The Face of the Enemy, featuring the Brigadier, will be released in June of 2015. An abbreviated blurb of the novel is plagued by nightmares of being trapped in a past that never happened. Lethbridge Stewart must unravel the mystery of a man 10 years out of his time, a man who cannot possibly still exist. Why do the ghosts of fallen soldiers still fight long-forgotten battles against living men? What is the secret of the rural English town of Deepdean? Lethbridge Stewart has good reason to doubt his own sanity, but is he suffering illness or injury, or is something more sinister going on?
All right. Also, in general news, they have announced the release of the Series 8 soundtrack. On May 18, we will see the release of the Doctor Who Series 8 soundtrack, consisting of 3 tracks, or 3 discs featuring 67 tracks from Peter Capaldi's first season, ranging from 1 song, The Caretaker, to 14 songs from Last Christmas. These scores performed by the BBC National Orchestra of Wales. Wow, Natural Orchestra, seriously. Murray Gold, and conducted by Ben Foster and James Shearman. The first 5,000 copies of the CD will include an extra 16-page booklet depicting the 13 Radio Times posters, 1 for each episode. The full track list can be seen on the site, and I noticed that the very first track of Disc 1 is the new Doctor Who theme. This will mark the fact that this is the first time the Doctor Who theme has been in a soundtrack since the Series 5 soundtrack release.
They kind of need to do that anyway.
Yeah, they really should have done that for Series 7.
Yes, they really should have. I actually mentioned that in a previous podcast. I bitched about that when the Series 7 soundtrack came out.
Yes, you did.
That they had changed the soundtracks, the theme so significantly it should have gotten its own release. And that really annoys me that it didn't, because I like the Series 7 theme better than I like the Series 8 theme.
They still need to put the theme on there just because the rest of the music for this last season is so forgettable.
Yeah, really.
No, really, there's only 3 songs on this soundtrack. Just kidding.
Well, I don't know. It kind of felt like that with a lot of the 11th Doctor soundtracks. They were all variations on I Am the Doctor or Madman in a Box.
I think it's time they make a new head of music, but that's an argument for another day.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's move on, Aaron.
Yep.
Election news. Head to the polls to defend Doctor Who, people. Because it is actually coming under attack from the Independent Party, the UK Independence Party. Doctor Who has become an issue in the British general election, in the Independent reporting that the leader of the UK Independence Party is calling on BBC to stop making popular entertainment programming. Nigel Farage told a public meeting in Rochester that the BBC should be cut back to the bone. He said the license fee should be cut to a third of its current value, and the corporation should be purely a public service broadcaster with an international reach. Examples of public service broadcasting include local news coverage, arts programs, and religious broadcasts, but does not include programs such as Doctor Who, Strictly Come Dancing, and Top Gear. Meanwhile, the Mirror, a Labour-supporting paper, is reporting that Doctor Who is better under Labour governments. The paper reckons that episodes shown when the Conservatives are in power score lower appreciation figures on IMDb than episodes shown when the Labour are in charge. The series was created in 1963 under a Conservative government and returned in 2005 under a Labour administration.
One thing that's not mentioned there is Farage, his independent party, is basically the UK equivalent of the Tea Party.
Mm-hmm.
They are
crazy.
They are extreme conservatives. They have a little more.
Are they as powerful as the Tea Party? That's the main question.
Actually, they're not quite as bad as the Tea Party, but they're pretty darn close. and they are gaining popularity in the UK.
This makes me sad.
I know. It kind of reminds me of the panic over the very conservative leader that was voted in Japan, who was against showing kissing in manga and anime and any other form of popular entertainment.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure how these people are getting power anywhere because of their really crazy, outlandish ideas, but maybe that's just me.
I'll say
Yeah,
if this happens, hopefully Disney buys up the rights.
if they give it up, I really think that somebody like ITV or Dave or somebody will
True.
snatch it. Will snatch it immediately if the BBC will give up those rights. Yeah, they're what's called a right-wing populist party, the UK Independence Party.
So whatever gets the right-wing populists up in arms.
Yep.
Sorry.
Moving on
yeah,
a bit, we've got our. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
The Tea Party is also considered a right-wing populist party. That's all I was going to say.
We've got quite a bit of Big Finish news, so I'm going to try and get through that as quickly as we can. Released within the past week, there is The Defectors, which is the first of the Locum Doctors trilogy, in this case featuring the seventh Doctor in what would normally be a third Doctor adventure with Jo Grant. Jo Grant is shocked to find most of her colleagues are missing. Then she discovers that the Doctor has inexplicably changed. But there's no time to worry about it, as she and her misplaced Time Lord friend are whisked to the mysterious Delphin Isle on a matter of national security. There they encounter a disturbingly odd form of local hospitality and learn of a highly classified incident that took place during the Cold War. Why exactly have they been brought here, and what is the truth concerning the bodies in the harbor and the vast project being undertaken beneath a cloak of security?
Yeah,
Also
I'm going to
released-
call these the Dimensions in Time series, where we take a random companion and match it up with a random Doctor for no apparent reason.
Well, I hope that by the end of the trilogy, a reason will be apparent, but you probably have to buy all three to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Also released this week was the fourth Doctor Adventure Deathmatch. The summary is the deathmatch is under new management. The Huntmaster's champion has been installed. All regular players are welcomed back to the Pursuit Lounge to observe the contest in luxurious surroundings. Privacy is assured. For this reason, we ask our elite guests to abide by the strict security protocols. Please note the house has no limits. In the gallery, your combatants can be observed on the orbiting Query Station, a purpose-built environment filled with deadly traps and hidden dangers. Prizes are offered for every kill with bonuses for rogue elements. Only an elite hunter can survive the endgame. Do you have a worthy champion? Kill or be killed, the only rule of the deathmatch. So we can guess that the Doctor is somehow going to be in the middle of all that. Although the
Of
summary
course
does
he
not
is.
say
He's
so.
the Doctor. He's always in the middle of everything. He would not be the Doctor if he wasn't in the middle of it, frequently unwittingly.
Yeah, I feel like he's probably going to open up the TARDIS right in the middle of the traps. And then this one is not a release, but this is actually story information on for an upcoming box set. This is the Companion Chronicles box set of First Doctor stories, featuring The Sleeping Blood by Martin Day. When the Doctor falls ill, Susan is forced to leave the safety of the TARDIS behind. Exploring a diffused research center in search of medical supplies, she becomes embroiled in the deadly plans of a terrorist holding an entire world to ransom and the soldier sent to stop him. The second story...
That's probably pre-Unearthly Child?
Most likely. It doesn't mention... it doesn't mention if any other actors there. Next is The Unwinding World by Ian Potter. Office life is tough, the commute is grind, nothing works quite as well as you'd like. Vicky seems to remember things being better once, before the little flat. It's time she put some excitement back in her life. It's just a shame the Doctor can't help.
So post-Vicky
not
departure.
Sure if that's post... Yeah, I'm like, if that's post-departure then, probably.
Although, Vicky left in, like, ancient Greece.
Yeah, that's true.
I have no idea what's up with that one. I'm
Next
wondering
is
if
the
that's
Founding Fathers.
that's actually before.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't
Okay,
know.
go ahead.
It does seem a little odd. Next is The Founding Fathers by Simon Guerrier. The TARDIS lands in Leicester Square in the summer of 1762. When the Doctor, Stephen, and Vicky find themselves locked out of the TARDIS, only one man can possibly help them. But the American, Benjamin Franklin, has problems of his own.
Now, that's perfectly right in the timeline. That's
Yeah.
after, actually, the episode we're reviewing tonight.
The only
And-
way it could be better in the timeline is if it was written by Dennis Spooner. Next is The Locked Room, also by Simon Guerrier. Stephen Taylor left the Doctor and the TARDIS to become king of an alien world that they do not have the rights to name, by the way. But it's now many years since he gave up the throne and went to live in a cell in the mountains, out of sight of his people. He's not escaping his past, quite the opposite, in fact, as his granddaughter, Sita, is about to discover.
Wow.
They are kind of skirting what they can legally do with him at that point, because they can't really include any of the inhabitants of that world.
Why is that?
The writer of the episode owns the rights to the Planet of the Savages. I think that was the name of it. But they own the rights to everything introduced in that serial.
Huh. Very interesting. That's written by who? Ian Stewart Black. I don't think I've ever seen that. Oh, well, that would be why no episodes of that serial actually exist.
Oh yeah, because that would be end of season 3. Yeah, so the end of season 3, beginning of season, and all of season 4 is where most of the holes are.
Yeah, that's right before the War Machines, which is intact, and basically somewhere from around here it gets jumped to the War Machines, because there's starting after the chase. I don't think there's a complete serial that survives until the War Machines. There is now, but there wasn't in the 80s.
Right. We've actually done a good job keeping ahead. It's only 24 minutes in, and we're already to our non-Who news.
Yeah. I noticed that. That's why I started making more comments.
Gotcha.
Okay. So our big non-Who news today is, I'm going to refer to it as Trailer Palooza.
Pretty much.
Just about everything that's
Yes.
coming out in movies has decided that it wants to make a trailer.
The only thing I have not seen a trailer for in the past week is Terminator.
I've seen plenty of trailer for that. I just don't think it's been out. I think it's been out for more than just this week.
Right.
So first of all, of course, was the trailers that came out in Celebration Anaheim. First is the trailer for Rebels Season 2. And, of course, then the trailer for Episode 7, The Force Awakens. And I have seen both of those trailers. And they look interesting.
Well, yeah, both great trailers.
And then the Star Wars anthology spin-off, Rogue One. I have not seen that one.
It's a short teaser that doesn't really say much about the show. It's more, to get you amped, waiting for the first real trailer.
Mm.
And then we move on to the world of Marvel with the Fantastic Four trailer that has come out for 20th Century Fox's Marvel continuity, featuring, of course, the new Fantastic Four, and I'm still not entirely sold on them.
No, definitely not.
I liked the trailer.
I don't-
I didn't mind it. I liked it.
I'm sitting there just kind of going, I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm feeling on it. It's kind of hard for me to buy some of the characterizations as being, the Fantastic Four. And then, of course, we have Jurassic World. I believe I actually saw this one in the theater. Actually, no, I kind of seen it in the theater because I haven't been to a movie recently. I've seen it at something.
You might have seen an older trailer from it. I don't know what the older trailers were like.
Yeah. But the Jurassic World looks interesting. I'm not sure if it's my cup of tea or not, but we'll see.
Yeah, it seems a little odd because the first one was a little more tongue-in-cheek, and apparently the second trailer is a little more suspense and horror filled.
It's Star-Lord versus the mafia of organized dinosaurs, apparently.
More like he's
And
the one
then-
organizing the dinosaurs, but
So then we come to Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice. The first teaser and the second teaser, neither of which I saw. I was going to listen to one while the opening bump was going on, but I didn't hear Matt's countdown.
The first teaser is basically like, you know, a look at the costumes, you know, another one just to get you amped up for future trailers. The second one is the one that was leaked and then they released it early as a result, which is the one people are bitching about it being allegedly too dark, which I don't really feel it.
If it has Batman in it, it can't be too dark. How does Batfleck work?
Here's my thing: they don't show enough to actually get an opinion on how either of the characters is going to work.
Right.
But I will
It
say
feels
that they're
disjointed.
taking Superman far too seriously again, which is still kind of irking me. So
I mean, all it
on that
has so
whole
far is
reservation.
basically headlines of people talking about Superman's presence in the world, and then Batman threatening Superman.
Do you
Really?
bleed?
Really?
But that's the exact quote
is it
too.
me, or does DC movies just basically have to do a dose of does not get it?
Yeah,
Pretty much, I think.
that's pretty much what's
I
been
mean,
happening
you know,
ever since the
between
third
this-
Batman movie.
And Will Smith as Deadshot, I'm pretty much ready to give up on DC superhero movies at this point.
It's just like, come on, Fox guys act together. Why can't you?
You mean Marvel?
Well, yeah, I'm talking about like Disney's Marvel MCU, but there's also Fox's take on the Marvel universe.
Yeah, at least they started trying to correct that.
You know, which isn't.
Here's an idea. How about we put the CW in charge of Warner Brothers, in charge of DC movies?
Yeah,
I would freaking like that. Whoever the production company is behind Flash, Arrow, because they're doing so much of a better job of building a DC universe than the movie people are, and the movie people keep taking stuff away from them. Damn
which
it,
is
guys!
only going to hinder them even more because apparently Warner Brothers doesn't know when to fucking shut up and just do something right.
Yeah. I mentioned after the Avengers came out, my friend Bob and I sat down and we actually plotted out the basic bare bones storylines for a DC series of movies leading up to Justice League that would have actually worked, and we did a better job than these guys have been doing. And I don't know if it's just because the fact that they don't have the good writers they need, or if they're suffering from massive doses of executive meddling. I don't know, but somebody's fucking up and needs to be replaced.
Interesting thing is there are so many versions of first-time meetings with Batman and Superman where they start off against each other and end up as allies that are so well received. Any of them could be adapted into a movie without all of, you know, everything. I mean, I'm still not assuming that this one's going to be bad. The trailer on its own does not say anything, you know, that I would consider necessarily negative, but still, there are so many stories they could adapt into it successfully, and I mean,
seriously, take the world's finest plotline from the DCAU. It is probably one of the best Superman Batman team up and reveal bits.
I'm trying to remember the name of the Kevin J. Anderson book I have. It's not in my room, but that was a good one too.
And I have seen some of the team ups myself, and I have to say that this trailer is not ringing true to any of the good team ups I've ever seen. So,
my big problem with the DC universe is they're going so far askew from the characters that we know and love that it's going to be very hard to try to peel them together into a proper Justice League. Go ahead, Aaron.
Wasn't there a problem with one of the writers? I can't remember if it was for the DC movies or. Oh yeah. Oh wait, know.
I think
I don't know.
someone left the Wonder
Someone-
Woman movie and
someone
they
was
replaced
saying-
them. I think.
Just recently, yeah. But
Yeah,
that's the
someone
Wonder
was
Woman movie.
saying-
That's way down the line.
So one of the writers or one of the producers or someone behind the scenes was talking smack about nerds and nerd culture and geek culture and
That was
how
David
creators
Goyer.
should not.
I'm pretty sure you're talking about David Goyer because he does
Yeah,
talk
'cause-
shit of that sort a lot.
Because he was talking about how, or whoever this person was talking about how creators should not be listening to the fanboys because they'll ruin everything.
Is this
Like,
the same guy who also
David Goyer
called?
does have a lot of negative things to say about comic fans. That's why I think it's him. He's had a lot of assholish quotes within the past few years, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's
he
somebody
writing-
else. It might be, but
Is he
I
writing for
remember-
DC movies,
He-
or
well,
is he?
I know I saw him listed in the credits of the trailer, but I don't remember what role. I know he wrote Man of Steel. I'm not sure if he's writing this one.
He wrote Man of Steel. He helped write the Batman trilogy beforehand.
He wrote-
I
wrote the
believe
Blade
he's
trilogy, of
involved
which
with it somehow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's had a lot of really negative shit thrown at the actual
which
fan
I
base who
don't
are
get.
actually turning out for his movies.
If he's been making comic book movies for almost 20 years, you'd think he'd have something nice to say and have some understanding of
What actually
he's
works and what not to say to people.
yeah, or even like of what why people like comics. I just
But
don't
no,
get it.
instead he'd rather be a dick.
What is his name? Something Goyer?
David.
David Goyer.
Okay.
This is also
Okay, yeah, I
the
think
man
so.
who pissed on Martian Manhunter and called She-Hulk a slut.
He's the one who said that She-Hulk was introduced so the Hulk would have someone to fuck. Never
Yeah.
mind that she's his cousin.
Oh yeah.
So
Never mind the
he
fact that he's
basically
his cousin.
suffers from a massive dose of does not get it.
Oh, in
And
so many
I
ways.
think it's kind of showing in his movies too.
It's
And
definitely
he's the
starting
one-
to show in
he's
the
one-
movies.
He's been the main person writing DC movies for probably the past 10 years.
Oh, that's right. He's the one who did Man of Steel, and he's writing an origin story called Krypton.
Oh, frell me.
I'll
DC,
admit, though,
until you
I
smart
like
up and
the
get rid of this guy,
Batman
they're done.
costume.
Sorry,
the
what was that,
Batman
Randy?
costume for the Batman versus Superman.
What
I
about
like it. It looks very
Hmm.
much like the Batman costume that we see in DC Universe Online, as like the future Batman costume.
The robotic suit kind of thing, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not a suit that we haven't completely seen something similar to before.
It's the first time we've seen it in the movies, though.
Yeah.
That
It'd
was
be
my
cool
point.
If they did a Dark Knight Returns movie. It'd be cyberpunkish.
Yeah, but that's also not a good thing to do to tie into a Justice League movie, and I don't.
Yeah,
think this
I'm
is
also
either.
a little concerned about bringing any of the Frank Miller's continuity into.
Yeah, that's usually a
bringing
bad
Frank Miller stuff into
sign.
Daredevil was a great idea. Bringing Frank Miller Batman stuff in, eventually we're going to get, are you dense, are you retarded or something, or we're going to get the Batman fucking someone while criminals burn to death.
Batman Year One, which I think was Miller, can be done.
I don't know if that was Miller. I don't think that was.
Really?
I think he
Yes,
was,
I think that's. I think
Isn't that
Batman Year
Jeff
One
Loeb?
might have been in the same universe as Aspar.
Because I'm pretty sure Miller at the time was busy with All-Star Batman and Robin.
I believe it is Frank Miller here. Hang on.
Huh.
Yes,
written by Frank Miller.
Wow.
Yeah, Batman Year One is Frank Miller, and that is doable.
So apparently for
that's
Batman,
more
he's
sane
2 and
Frank
5.
Miller.
Now, I might
Yeah,
as well
Batman-
move on to Aaron's news piece here now, I think,
Yeah.
David
Yep.
Tennant.
before we speculate too
We
much.
meet again, David Tennant. Anyway, Tennant to host Shakespearean Celebration. Or Shakespeare Celebration. David Tennant has been signed on up to host a celebration of William Shakespeare to mark the 400th anniversary of the playwright's death. The special event will broadcast live on BBC Two next April from the Royal Shakespeare Theatre in Stratford-upon-Avon. It will feature a variety bill inspired by Shakespeare and performed by major international talent. It will celebrate Shakespeare's enduring influence on all the performing arts from forms from opera to jazz, from ballet to musicals. Tennant joined the RSC in 1996, playing Touchstone As You Like It. He went on to play the leading role in Romeo and Juliet and Antipholus in Syracuse in The Comedy of Errors, for which he received a nomination in the 2000 Ian Charleston Awards for Best Classical Actor Under 30. He returned to the RSC to play Baron in Love Labour's Lost, a much acclaimed Hamlet in 2008. In winter 2012, he played the title role in Richard II. So yeah.
He also played the Hamlet in the TV version of the RST Hamlet, which I believe was done either in 2009 or 2010.
Mm-hmm.
It was based on their theatrical version, but was made specifically for for either BBC One or BBC Two. I don't remember which.
I think he'd make a pretty good Hamlet, actually.
Mm-hmm.
He did. That's why he got it. That's why they asked him to come back to do that.
I grudgingly accept.
It was him doing the Hamlet in 2008 for the Royal Shakespearean Theatre is why we got movies in 2009 for Doctor Who.
I still dispute that, but yeah, it's probably one of the reasons. It's not the reason
that and the fact that I don't think they casted Matt Smith right away. I think it took them a few months to do so, and during that time, Davies and Tennant were, putting in a last few things to keep Doctor Who running.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at that point, I remember when those movies were coming out, Tennant still hadn't announced whether he was staying or going for the when the first 2-3 movies were made.
I don't remember if I saw a timestamp on the interview I saw with him announcing it, so I couldn't really say for certain myself.
Mm.
You were watching the show at that time. I wasn't. So.
Well, yeah,
All I've heard is from the guy who was helping to publish books or getting the rights to publish books from the bigwigs that he had talked to, was that the BBC had run out of money due to the switchover from analog to digital. I'm not quite sure how that can be varied though either.
I didn't think that hit until 2010 though.
No, it was 2008 because I was living in my old apartment building.
Yeah, I know, but
not in the UK.
By the time they did the switch in, well, yeah, but by the time they did the switch in the BBC, they would have already allocated out the next year's budget.
I don't know.
And they should have had enough time to do some lead up to that transition.
Because
that's the way they did it in the U.S. is they set a date like 10 years in the future, and every year they put aside so much money to switch around X amount of their equipment to the new stuff. And then finally, when the date hit, they switched the last bit of equipment and did the switch over. And they had to get it pushed back a couple of times because all the equipment wasn't ready. I remember that.
Well, we don't really know how it happened in the UK, at least I don't know.
So this last piece, I didn't think we were going to have time for, but since we do, I'll go ahead and bring it up. I'm resending it to Skype in case Matt didn't have it open. Writer Simon Pegg confirms that he's writing a role for Idris Elba, which he claims is a kick-ass role for Star Trek 3, mentioning that they're on a 5-year mission. They don't need to keep bumping into the same 5 people.
Is he punning there?
I don't know.
Who is Idris Elba?
He's known for Heimdall and Stacker Pentecost as the main roles that I would know him as anyway. Heimdall being from the Thor movies and the upcoming Avengers.
Kick-ass movies or not?
Let me Control F it, but I don't think so. No, it doesn't look like it.
Okay, I thought Peg might be making a pun. But... because they always keep putting kick-ass in quotes,
Yeah,
meaning
I
they're
think that's
just
because
quoting.
it's. I think that's just because it's a
Just
word
because
that a
it's actually
journalist
a
should not be
quote.
using to describe something. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, and I know there's been. I've seen a lot of petitioning online for him to be cast for quite a few roles. So he seems to be a pretty popular actor.
Apparently.
So I'm sure it'll be well appreciated that he's getting this role in this movie.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I believe he
now that
was. I believe he was the guy who looked over the Rainbow Bridge.
Yeah, we covered
Yes,
that.
yes, that would be
Heimdall.
Heimdall, right?
Mhm.
Of course,
Yep.
there was a bit of outrage that Heimdall was not white, even though they're Norse, but
Who
thankfully
Yeah.
that
cares?
didn't
ended
bother me
quickly.
none.
No,
Didn't
Yeah,
I
bother
thought it
me
was
none.
pretty awesome.
yeah, he was good in that role. Stacker
It
Pentecost
basically
was
he
pretty
didn't
well
show up
done as
white in
well.
Norse culture because they wouldn't have known any better. It's
Yeah,
not like Heimdall came to Earth; he was watching the frickin' bridge.
Hmm.
right,
They'd only assume he was white. Anyway,
right.
so now that Simon Pegg is writing Star Trek 3, do you think it's going to become Scotty centric?
I like how he's also gotten the chance to see the Force Awakens. Damn you, Simon Pegg!
Has he seen it, or is he? I
Damn
don't think
you!
they've
I don't think
finished.
they finished it yet.
In
If
the
you've seen
interview,
it,
Pegg
that
also
must be
talks
really
about what he
rough.
thought about having seen Star
Huh.
Wars The Force Awakens. He must have seen probably an advanced screener. So it
Although
probably doesn't have.
I do remember that J.J. Abrams mentioned that because they use so many practical effects, the work print looks almost like the finished version. So he probably saw the work print if he
Mhm.
saw
That's
it.
what I meant by an advanced screener. So not
Mhm.
all of the CGI wouldn't be in, but yeah, all of the practical effects would be. And the fact that they use so many practical effects, do you hear George Lucas spinning from here?
Oh my god, he used practical effects!
Why would he use practical effects? Practical effects never work right. Just spinning like a top until he flies off like a helicopter.
So we're gonna have to see how everything goes on there.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, it made Simon Pegg squee, but we'll see how that goes. It's about 1:45, so we might as well move on to our featured review for the night,
Mm-hmm.
The Chase. Um, Matt, do you happen to have a summary, or should I go ahead?
I don't have a pre-planned one, but I could cover it if you really want me to.
My throat's a little harsh tonight, so if you could.
Okie doke. I did watch it today. This is one of the few I actually have watched recently because the other ones I've watched so many times before. The Chase, for whatever reason, I didn't have her watched multiple times.
I
So
hadn't seen
this
it
is
since
like,
the 80s.
I think this is
I,
my
I, I
second or
saw it
third time,
once.
maybe.
I saw it once, like 1986, 87, and I swear I didn't pay a lot of attention to it because there were, I know at least 2 or 3 of the episodes I didn't recognize.
So yeah, to cover basics, we open up with Vicky trying to help out with the doctor making some sort of screen contraption, to which she's shooed away because the doctor's very busy trying to concentrate on what he's doing. She goes over to Ian, who is reading a book on space aliens, to which she gets a little too interested and pesters him a little bit, and gets shooed away again, to which she goes over to Barbara to talk about her being shooed away, and then ruins what was apparently supposed to be her dress coming up soon. So Vicky just kind of being a little bit of a pain in the neck, but just as all this is finally coming to an end, the doctor's contraption starts making a very loud sound that gets everyone's attention. He manages to finally quiet it down after everyone has wandered into the room and starts trying to explain it without actually explaining it enough. To which Vicky has to start piping in, helping them understand. And apparently, what it is essentially is a contraption that can video play any given time and time and space due to the reading off recordings of light memory, essentially. Um, to which Vicky was mentioning that it was something that was being worked on at home before she had left with the doctor. So she knew a little bit of it, but it hadn't been completely finished yet. They start testing it out. They first see Abraham Lincoln giving the Gettysburg Address. They go see, I think it was Queen Elizabeth?
Queen Elizabeth and Shakespeare.
Yes, and I was going to add Shakespeare, to which they also give a little kind of wink and nod to him getting the idea of maybe trying to look at Hamlet for a possible future play, even though he gave the idea originally a cold shoulder. They also play a little clip of the Beatles, which I want to say might have been a year or two old at the time that they actually played it.
Actually, it was very recent at that point.
Oh, it was? I couldn't remember for sure. I could have sworn it was a little bit older. But they played a clip of the Beatles, and again, showing off a little bit of the time differential between Ian and Barbara and Vicky, because Vicky is apparently from the distant future. The Beatles is more or less looked upon as a very retro but still very memorable impact on music, whereas Ian and Barbara, they're still just this brand new thing that they were just getting into before they left, apparently. So after this, they decide the TARDIS finally starts to land on a planet. Looking around, it seems to be mostly desert with two suns, so it's obviously not Earth. Vicky is getting antsy, so she decides to lead Ian off into the desert to have a look around, but not before he's given the TARDIS magnet, as it's called, which will help them apparently get back to the TARDIS. In case they happen to get lost, because it's a desert, every hill looks the same. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Barbara apparently taking a break in the sun, just do a little sunbathing, when they hear the video screen going off again. Barbara goes in to have a look, but as she's pushing things, the image actually gets clearer, and she starts hearing Dalek voices, and they're actually giving commands, apparently preparing to go after the TARDIS, but not mentioning it by name. The Doctor happens to walk in just as that's happening as well, and pays very eager attention, as this must have been something that already just happened not too long ago, and quickly run off after Ian and Vicky to try and get them back to the TARDIS. However, in the middle of doing so, the two of them, Ian and Vicky, end up in a trap by some sort of, I guess you'd call it a desert octopus at this point. It used to be a monstrous octopus of some sort to begin with, but they also apparently are flesh eaters and were trying to trap the two to eat them. While this is happening to them, the Doctor and Barbara are still outside as a sandstorm hits and have to take cover, or at least partial cover, for a little bit. The day and night cycles pass apparently very fast on this planet, so it's not too long before the night is done and the sandstorm itself also passes by. They come up and they start preparing to move out when all of a sudden they also notice movement in the desert, and they notice a couple of Daleks popping up out of the ground. They decide to stay still and listen on the Daleks as more of them close in, and they seem to be looking for the TARDIS, which also just got buried, which is also what the Doctor and Barbara were trying to do as they were getting caught in the sandstorm. So they're obviously close, and they just want to keep in the area in case they can find out anything more, but end up bumping into other natives from the planet, which essentially look to be like some sort of fishmen. I forget what the name of their race is. But in the meantime, Vicky and Ian are dodging the octopus people.
I believe they were just called the Iridians.
The Iridians?
Yeah, because the planet is Iridius.
Ah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So Vicky and Ian continue to dodge the octopus as well. The Iridians talk to the Doctor and Barbara, kind of updating them in their slow speech, sharing the story between one another, trying to keep them up to date. Essentially, the planet used to be a giant ocean until it just started drying up due to the intense heat of getting too close to the sun. The octopus creatures are apparently
They're
intelligent
called
enough to
Mire beasts, by the way.
Mire
the octopus.
beasts. Yeah, the Mire beasts are apparently intelligent enough to have outpowered and out strategized the enemy by apparently the fact that they breed like rabbits and are far too strong and again flesh eaters. So they start eating the Iridians if they got too close and tried to stop them. So they decided it was better off to try and seal off sections of their underwater city and try and stop them from getting too far out, even though they lost a huge amount of the city anyway. They are also taking to blowing up certain sections to try and keep them permanently trapped until they hopefully might starve themselves off and the Iridians can slowly take back their land again. Meanwhile, as they're talking about this, they also mention the fact that the section where Ian and Vicky are is about to be detonated as well, and quickly try to take off, but are too late to stop the explosion. Inside, Ian and Vicky are just saved from one of the beasts, and Ian is knocked out by the rubble that came down. Vicky takes a few moments, having been stunned from her near-death encounter with one of the Mire beasts, and then goes to seek help to get Ian patched up since he took a huge block to the head. The Doctor and Barbara are taken in by the Iridians and go to get some rest and food while they then begin to plot out what they're going to do to try and find Ian and Vicky, but are then notified by the Iridians, who are at least nice enough not to be jerks, that the Daleks have actually made contact with them and taken some of their people hostage, and are now also threatening to destroy their city completely if they don't turn in the Doctor and his companions in order to obviously exterminate them and get them out of their hair. To this, they pretty much have to just be civil about it and wait and see what all unfolds. To which Vicky happens upon the Iridians just in time to tell the Doctor and Barbara where Ian is and what she had seen outside, which she had actually found the TARDIS now unburied due to the captors of the Daleks, but the Daleks didn't use their captured Iridians just for laser blasting because they were of no further use to them. As they are about ready to be taken out to the Daleks, one of the Mire beasts breaks through one of the sealed-off doorways and attacks the Iridians, to which the three then make their escape, meet up with Ian again, and finally get back to the TARDIS after tricking one of the Daleks into a trap that sent it tumbling down into the caves below. They managed to hop into the TARDIS just in time before the Daleks open fire on them. They still open fire on the TARDIS, to which the TARDIS just shrugs it off as usual and teleports away. The Daleks then proceed to go back into their new time machine and give chase, hence the title of the particular serial. The first place they end up is, I believe, the Empire State Building. To which they take a quick couple minutes break to have a look around, figure out what their plan is going to be, and then head back inside the TARDIS before the Daleks can show up. They meet one of the locals who is apparently a visitor from Texas and believes this is all a big movie trick.
Actually, I believe he said he was from Alabama.
Oh, that's right.
Alabama,
he said he was
there
from
we go.
Alabama. That's right. Never mind.
Yeah.
He tries taking pictures several times, and each time he's a little too late to take a picture of either the TARDIS or the Dalek or the time machine. To which he thinks, again, that the Dalek is a big joke, which is in his benefit because the Dalek doesn't think he's the threat, but actually also lets him stay alive because he was useful for information, and found out that the Doctor and the others had already taken off, and try to get back into the time stream as quickly as possible.
How he survived, I don't know.
Yeah, if I was a Dalek, I would have just gone, yeah, you're also kind of annoying. Zap.
The next stop they made was the Mary Celeste.
Yes, the next stop they made was the Mary Celeste, to which Barbara is attacked by one of the crew members, but Vicky also came out in time to grab a bludgeoning weapon and knock the guy out. Ian also
the
tries
bludgeoning
to
weapon
butt in.
is, by the way, a life preserver. It's basically a piece that they hold onto the rail that you grab onto when the ship lurches.
But knocks the guy out, and they think someone else is coming, but it ends up being Ian, and he gets once again clobbered over the head. Because Vicky apparently wasn't looking very hard when she leaned over and knocked somebody out. They take Ian back in after he's all rubber-legged after being beaten about the head for the second time in only a couple of hours, and get him patched up once more. They then take off as the doctor starts really to worry even more because he's realizing that their time between landing and the Daleks catching up to them is getting shorter and shorter as they continue this chase. Apparently, the Daleks are figuring out how the TARDIS works and are catching up on how to follow it. They finally take a landing spot. They've just been randomly picking whatever and going with it and trying to see if they can find a good place to actually face off against the Daleks. To which they land in what seems to be a European-style, Gothic-esque sort of castle, and they decided it's best to try and have a fight there. As they continue to search out the place, they've noticed that it seems unusually predictable. Might be the word for it, because they notice that every time they step on a certain step, bats will come out or start making noise. They get close to a lab table, and a Frankenstein-esque creature gets up and then goes back down as soon as they walk away. Also, a Dracula guy who pops out literally saying that he's Dracula and then pops right back to where he came from without much to do. And there also seems to be other little trapdoors and so forth, but nothing at least lethal yet, as nothing actually stays around long enough to actually attack the TARDIS crew. However, that changes as the Daleks come in and start ordering out threats at anything that moves, to which the Frankenstein-esque monster is the first one to start reacting very negatively and starts mauling one of the Daleks, essentially acting the camera as being a Dalek as he lurches at it and roars and starts clawing at it. They run back out into the main room where the Dracula guy is, and he starts actually spooking out the Dalek because he takes a laser blast and just keeps walking. And also starts giving commands to the Dalek to stop trying to run away. The Frankenstein monster soon shows up afterwards as well, and actually literally lifts one of the Daleks and then smashes it to the ground. The TARDIS crew flees, but they flee a little too fast, as Vicky thought that one of the monster-esque people might have had an actual real person, and then has to stow away in the Dalek time machine in order to catch up with the others. The TARDIS crew doesn't realize that they left Vicky behind until they're well on their way, and they start to make plans to really seek vengeance on the Daleks, just in more sort of in Vicky's name, because they're not sure what might have ended up with Vicky now, if she might have gotten killed by Daleks or something else might have happened to her. Also assuming that she might have actually gotten left behind in the constant panic that happened at the very end there. And hopefully they then finally concoct a scheme that they might be able to take the Dalek time machine, and that might be what they could use to try and save Vicky. They land on a planet, was it Marinus?
Mechanus.
Mechanus.
Yeah.
Mechanus.
Think
Very
like
similar
mechanic,
names.
but with an us instead of an ick.
Mm-hmm. So they land on a planet Mechanus, which is apparently a very lethal planet full of even vegetation that will actually attack people.
Giant killer shrooms!
And yes, they essentially have giant killer shrooms almost everywhere, but they quickly find out that there's a light setup that actually helps protect people along a pathway in order to keep the killer mushrooms at bay. And they followed this pathway up to a cave where they then spend most of the night. Vicky does finally come out, but not after also finding out the next Dalek plan, which is to use a robotic copy of the Doctor to try and infiltrate the group and then kill them. Vicky does come out to try and follow the others, but she is attacked by one of the shrooms. She is then saved by, I believe it was Ian and the Doctor, while Barbara is left behind to watch over their equipment. Barbara is then tricked by the robotic Doctor into wandering off and is nearly attacked. And when Ian happened to be nearby and then attacks the robotic Doctor. Then it's a face-off between the two doctors, which ends with the real doctor actually ripping out the internal robotics of the fake doctor and then leaving it lay there. They go head back to the cave, but by time morning rolls in, the Daleks figured out where the humans have been hiding. They have the all four humans back, by the way, since they also saved Vicky. Um, the Daleks see through the Doctor's attempt to try and pretend to be the robot, because obviously they could tell if the robot was still around or not, just by checking their scheduled reports from it. And they are suddenly saved by a mechanoid giant golf ball. I'm not sure what to call them. Essentially, there's a big round robot thing
Mechanoids.
that has a little thing that pops up at the top when it talks. And it essentially mentions the fact that it's speaking English and that they should get into the lift with it. It then takes it up to the city that they had noticed just before the Daleks attacked, and then guides the TARDIS crew in and leaves it essentially in this weird room with a couple of beds and so forth, and a big makeshift thing that reaches to the ceiling in the middle. This is where they meet. Is it Steve?
Steven.
Steven. This is where they meet Steven, who is apparently a part of a terraforming group,
No.
essentially.
No, the mechanoids themselves had been sent by a terraforming group
Oh, the
to
mechanoids had been.
terraform the planet, but that was before an interstellar war broke out. Steven was a pilot, probably for the military, who crash landed on the planet and was rescued by the mechanoids.
But he was rescued by the mechanoids more or less to be essentially ape in their cage. The
Yeah,
only time
because
they
he
wouldn't
doesn't
bother
know
him
the-
is when he was up his little tower on the roof, because there's no real need to watch over him because there's no real easy way to escape.
Yeah. Steven didn't have the code that would tell the mechanoids that he was a colonist,
Mm-hmm.
so they basically treated him like a prisoner.
And of course, the TARDIS crew definitely didn't have those codes, so they're also being treated more or less the same way. However, because the Daleks are by no means dumb, they also knew that the TARDIS crew somehow disappeared in those caves. And then they weren't apparently that big of a cave system either, and they figured out that one of the walls was hollow. They find the lift, take it up, and they start attacking the mechanoids, and pretty quickly start to wipe the place out and start setting everything on fire as both sides fight. The Daleks shooting off with the lasers, and the mechanoids having various other weapons, mostly grappling arms that could hold the Daleks in place, as well as their little mini flamethrower things, which I'm not entirely sure how effective they are, but we're not exactly told how they are used in the first place either. They just kind of surprise attack with those. The TARDIS crew takes to Steve's little hideout on the roof and find the cord just barely long enough to reach to the ground floor again and head back for the TARDIS. We're not entirely sure what happens to Steven, at least at the end of this story, but we do see him wandering in the forest while Ian and Barbara are trying to talk the Doctor into letting them use the Dalek time machine in order to get back to their own time finally. It takes a little coaxing from Vicky, but the Doctor finally does willingly do it and lets them get back home. And that is more or less that.
And remember, on Mechanus, mushroom eat you.
Mushroom eat you, unless there's sunlight.
Mhm.
Steven didn't mention that he was on a secret mission to rescue Princess Toadstool and bring her back to Earth.
Okay, I would actually like a minute to talk about something that Matt touched on in this, and that is the fact that during the first episode of this, you see the time-space visualizer show an image of the Beatles doing the song. What was the song they were? Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride. That particular recording was from the April 15th, 1965 episode of Top of the Pops. The reason this is important was the fact that Top of the Pops, like Doctor Who, was subject to the BBC purge. And that particular sequence is now the only surviving footage of the Beatles actually performing on Top of the Pops, which they had done multiple times.
It's worth noting, even though that was the present for people watching, that was the future for Ian and Barbara.
Yes, it was. Although it was obvious that they knew who the Beatles were by their response to that.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm assuming the Beatles were out by 63.
I think so. Although, if you remember the Unearthly Child, Ian had just been, was actually a bit fond of popular music.
So he probably knew more than most people to begin with.
Because he knew, what was it, John Smith and the Common Men was a song that was played in there.
Mm-hmm.
Which he actually mentioned was the stage name of I think the Honorable Aubrey Waits or something like that. Mm-hmm. It would be interesting noting that Beatlemania had just started in 63. When Ian and Barbara had left. So they were probably just a small band at the time. Still, that would have probably been the first time they had heard Ticket to Ride. Right. Considering they'd been traveling in time and space for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I just find it interesting to notice that, such a big name band like the Beatles, that they got most of those Top of the Pops destroyed, and that the only surviving copy of that is due to Doctor Who. I just find that to be amusing as hell.
It's just kind of amusing in of itself, is it not?
And so that debate, this particular serial was aired starting in 22 May, so that particular clip was only a month old when this aired. There was earlier Top of the Pops with the Beatles doing previous songs, but again, those no longer exist in the archives.
Ouch. BBC's
in fact,
got
the Beatles,
kicking itself.
The Beatles were number one on the very first Top of the Pops, which was in 1964. Top of the Pops, by the way, is no longer a regular broadcast in the UK. It does Christmas specials, but it ceased production in 2006.
Might be to do something to the music scene, but critiques on music later.
In its final year, it had been shunted over to BBC Two. And that was after it gotten rebranded, being the all-new Top of the Pops in 2003. So, I guess eventually those things got to go.
I don't know. Music is taking a rough all around anyway.
Another thing I noticed is that this episode is a lot campier than previous Doctor Who's.
Yes.
A little bit, yes.
This is the Daleks as the three, or in this case, four Stooges.
They're still very viable
even the
thread.
Soundtrack. I listened to the soundtrack and I'm like, oh my God, Dudley, what were you saying? Or what were you thinking? It's very much, you can listen to the soundtrack and kind of get where they got the idea for the soundtrack for the first Doctor Who movie. Okay, so let's go through our basic our basic four things you liked, things you didn't like, and we will include Tim's opinions, who is absent but did leave us as notes.
Yes, I've got those right on hand here.
Okay, so you can deal with that, but let's first talk to Matt.
Okay.
So, overall thing that I liked? You talked about it being campy, but I don't think it's campy in any means of a bad way. It's very campy in the fact that it was doing things that only 1960s would do, but in a good way, only things that 1960s would do. Like, none of the ideas that they actually did in this were by any means half-assed. They managed to somehow pull the strings just well enough to keep everything in budget and actually pull everything off like they were meant to.
Right.
All right. I disagree with you on that, Matt.
You can disagree with me, but that's my opinion. Is that I think they did a wonderful job of what little they had.
Looking at this, for me, it was obvious that if they had kept trending that way, Doctor Who would have basically turned into what Lost in Space became.
I can see that, and that's again more or less the thing at the times, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, which
Although
would have.
I also think this season I think was intended to be a bit more comical than some of what came before and after as well.
It depends. This is the same season as the Dalek invasion of Earth. So,
True. I mean, like this is the same season where the Dennis Spooner historicals start, things like that, rather than being in Lucarati ones, things of that nature. So it's a bit more comical of a show than it was a year before.
yeah, I'm just saying that this is still technically the same season as Dalek Invasion of Earth, which is a very serious serial.
And while this is not as serious as Dalek Invasion of Earth, I would still argue that the Daleks are still treated with a huge amount of threat. They are by no means bad to the point of, like, say, being bumbling idiots.
True.
Matt,
they are constantly on the heels of the Doctor.
A Dalek who stammered and couldn't do math.
I would say that
also
blooper
true.
more than I would say that it was something pretty planned.
But at least the Doctor was still afraid of the Daleks, as compared to the previous serial when he was not at all.
Yeah. As soon as he even saw the Daleks, he's like, "Holy smokes! Shh, listen."
Oh no, he was afraid of the Daleks in that he was just choosing not to show it.
True.
Because, here he has very little face time with the Daleks. He's dealing with them solely with his companions, who all except Vicky know who the Daleks are, and are dealing with them.
And Vicky is very quickly learning how to deal with Daleks.
Yeah, Ian and Barbara know the Daleks. They've been on both the previous excursions. They know the threat of the Daleks, and so the Doctor's not wasting any time going, "Oh, we'll be fine." No, he's like, "This is a problem."
Mm-hmm.
Especially the fact that the threat that the Daleks now have access to time travel.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Bill, so what did you like about this?
What I liked was that this is essentially, in some ways, the Daleks meets the Keys of Marinus, except pulled off more smoothly than either. By which I mean it's obviously the Daleks themselves as the threat, along with the gimmick of the new setting every episode that the Keys of Marinus had. But I do think it pulled it off a bit more smoothly than the previous than the episode I named did as well.
Absolutely agree.
I don't know. I haven't watched the Keys of Marinus in a long time.
I saw it around the same time that I originally saw this.
Mm-hmm.
Keys of Marinus kind of gets really bogged down really quickly.
And,
I have Tim's here as well. He mentions that
I'll ask for Tim's in a moment, Bill.
Oh, okay.
Let's do our live people first.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, what did you like?
I liked how the whole traveling aspect was emphasized. I mean, they were in a rush to hop from place to place, but the change in scenery and just kind of the off-the-wall places that they stopped at were different enough to really kind of keep the viewer engaged.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed that aspect. It emphasizes the whole theme, the whole purpose of the series is them traveling not just through time but through space, and just the essence of exploration. And hey, we're being pursued by these evil machines, or these evil creatures in machines. Let's but still we could take like a few minutes just to look around, poke around, and see what's going on. especially when they noticed that they were in the swamp with the killer mushrooms, and there's all of a sudden a city that's almost right next to them, and they're like, "Hey, why we didn't even notice that when it was dark?" That's amazing. So I just thought that was really cool. It kind of, brought forth a lot of the childlike wonder and stuff that the series has.
All right. So, what I liked was the madcapness of it without it. Now I can separate madcap from campy. The madcap of the like Aaron said, the whole traveling, all the different scenes and stuff was good. The campy I feel was like the Daleks being played for comedy. That was not part of the madcapness to it. I liked the madcapness, didn't like the camp. So go ahead with what you thought about Tim's, Bill.
Okay. I should mention this is a little risky as Tim cannot change his mind if we
That's
read someone
fine.
else has his. But his the way he described is the way the creativity and absurdity just kept snowballing from scene to scene. So similar to the madcap description you gave there, except essentially that it increased in absurdity as the serial went on.
To some
All right.
degree.
So what didn't you like, Matt?
I think a couple places that we visited, we actually didn't visit long enough. At the same time, what do you do with them? Like the previously mentioned Empire State Building or the Mary Celeste. We stopped there, but they were both like within the same episode. It's kind of a shame that they couldn't use the sets a little bit longer, but at the same time, what are you going to do? You're obviously not going to have an all-out fight with the Daleks on Empire State Building without it being a royal mess. And the Mary Celeste obviously didn't have enough space either.
Although that it was kind of humorous to find out that was what actually caused the Mary Celeste to become abandoned.
Yes.
Yes.
They see these Daleks and instantly they freak.
I think it could have been grimmer with the Daleks exterminating everybody, but yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that was a little bit out of the Daleks to let all these people keep jumping.
That'll be next serial if we want to get that dark with the Daleks.
Yeah, it's for me. That's kind of I'll wait for my turn. Bill.
Okay. What I had listed as it's the fact that there's really no the DARDIS, as it's been dubbed by fans, the Dalek time machine, sort of comes from nowhere and goes to nowhere. There's really no explanation of where it comes from, or why the Daleks can't build another one. And we can speculate all we want about it being stolen from a Time Lord, but ultimately the show is just like, we don't care, the serial's over.
Yeah, it is a little odd.
That is a little, because it's obviously that the Daleks TARDIS here is better than the Doctor's. It's faster because they're doing those exchanges better.
Or at least it's the same as the Doctor's if it was in good repair. At the very
had
least.
A full crew.
But yeah, there's no really indication of where it came from and why can't they get another. So it's a lack of continuity that I think they just weren't really worried about at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron.
I didn't like some of the costumes, particularly the costumes on the Iridians.
They were a little see-through.
The Iridians, the Iridians, I didn't mind.
You could see the skull caps, and there was one scene where the skull cap was actually peeling off of the back of the guy's neck. That I saw.
The Iridians, I didn't mind. The Mire Beast, I did.
The Mire Beast
yeah,
were
the
pretty
Mire Beast
bad.
was kind of not so great either, too.
That was an Ed Wood effect, is what that was.
Everything
the only
else
thing
was
missing was tossing Bela Lugosi at it to have it fake fight him.
Yeah, basically everything else was more human-oriented, costume-wise, so it didn't really bother me all that much. And yeah, the costumes for the fun house or for the haunted house attraction were typically stagey looking, but you'd expect that.
How did they not get sued by Universal Studios?
Yeah,
because those they would only have to actually worry about the people who had the story rights, but even then they weren't actually borrowing from the stories. And outside of Dracula, they didn't call any one of them by name.
Technically, the place was called, I believe, Frankenstein's Mansion or something.
Oh, that's right, it was, wasn't it? So
Yes,
they
it
did call
was.
it the Frankenstein name too.
Yeah, and that was the Universal Studios Frankenstein with the scar across the head and the bolts in the neck.
To some
Um,
degree, it's still more theatrical, more stagey than theatrical makeup.
no, but I mean the look of it. If you look at the original description of Frankenstein in the books, he looks nothing like what Universal Studios did in the 30s. There were no bolts in the neck.
I mean, there's also the episode is kind of hinging its fact on the assumption that the audience has watched the Universal films or at least seen photos of them. So rather than trying to replace them in their own way as if they were actual characters in the story.
It just seemed to me that was something that Universal Studios would have slapped a lawsuit on him for. Because anybody else that uses the likeness of the Universal Studios monsters generally gets hit with a cease and desist.
That depends if they make it different enough. And they actually did add a little bit of different makeup appliances in the
Did Universal have rights in both countries at this time?
Well, actually, what I'm thinking what happened was the fact that this literally flew under Universal's nose.
Yeah,
the fact that Doctor Who was not that popular at the time. So this was a little, UK television show, and Universal Studios is in Hollywood. Means they probably weren't even aware of it until it was far past too late. And at this point, Universal Studios is just like, eh.
And again, I know from the fact that I'm a fan of the movie Monster Squad, as long as the makeup is different enough, Universal won't pull anything. That's why they had to change the makeup so much for that particular movie.
Yeah, but at the same time, I didn't notice. I mean, I looked at it and I went, square head, cut across the forehead, bolts in the neck. Yeah, that's basically...
Actually, it doesn't have a cut across the forehead. I'm looking at a picture of it right now.
I saw it when I was watching it, Matt. And I made note of it.
I see some extra bolts on the forehead, but there's no cut across it. I am looking at a still image of him right now. Close up, sitting with the Doctor even. It's probably on the stream.
It looked close enough to...
you gotta do it a little bit close.
Careful, because there is an image. Exact. There is an image on Google of the Doctor with the monsters instead of the actual monsters.
Yes, I know. I've seen it. It's also colorized.
Okay, just making sure that wasn't the one you were looking at.
No.
Anyway, so what I really didn't like about this episode was the Daleks. Not their costume. Their new costumes were good. Except for I noticed that one of the little new panels on the Daleks, on one of them was broken.
Oops.
But just the fact that they play them for comedy rather than threat.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting that these are the elite squad that the Supreme chooses to pilot this rare time machine, and they're kind of, as I mentioned, the Four Stooges.
Yeah, I mean, and they don't kill anybody in this, except for some Meridians. They do kill the episode. The first couple of episodes, they're actually pretty threatening, except for the one crawling itself out of the sand and going.
Still a little surprised they didn't kill anybody at the Empire State Building.
Yeah,
I am a little bit taken back by that too. Yes,
I mean, that would have been the Dalek would have demanded a question, and when the guy started laughing at that, the Dalek would have fried him.
Or as soon as he got his information, he probably would have fried him and made it look like he jumped.
He would have been fried.
It was a little fan servicey when they did that.
By the way, random
what do you mean by fan servicey in this particular aspect, Aaron? Because I'm confused.
I mean the other versions of the term fan service. People use the term fan service to describe their favorite characters being dressed up in different costumes and stuff like that. It's also, referred to as TNA also. But there's also forums where you've got popular characters showing up in the real world and like talking with their fans, and the person they're talking to is just gushing and being like, "Oh my God, you're the greatest creation ever!" Like, give me
I
your
You
really
must
don't.
be from
autograph, that type of
Hollywood.
thing.
I really didn't see that in this.
That's kind of how it felt. That's actually
I don't know. It
exactly
didn't
how
feel
it
that way
felt
to
when they
me.
were talking.
No.
When the Dalek was talking to the guy from Alabama, and the guy from Alabama is just practically tripping over himself, laughing at the Dalek and going, "Oh my God, you're the greatest creation ever!" This is
Well,
fantastic.
he's thinking it's a Hollywood gimmick.
Well, yes, but I thought it felt kind of meta. I thought it was kind of a meta response to how the Daleks had been received, how popular the Daleks had been.
I
In
don't know.
London,
I
at
didn't
least.
see it that way.
Yeah, I didn't see
Yeah.
it that way. By the way, random comment in that scene. When we did the summary, we mentioned that that guy names the cereal.
Mm-hmm. But
Sort of, yeah.
yeah, he does kind of. But at the same time, um, you know, if you look at everything that the Daleks have done before when dealing with people, and everything the Daleks have done after with dealing with people, there's no way those people, or there's no way that guy would have
Right.
lived.
I mean,
And
granted, they don't do quite as much exterminating on site in the serials before this as they would, but you would think they would have shot somebody at this point, like
well,
the guy
no,
that they were
the
telling not to
guy,
run away.
the guy laughing at him, the Dalek would have seen it as mocking, and you don't mock a Dalek and live.
True.
That would be
I mean,
that would have been
the
why.
the the Doctor mocked the Daleks and didn't get exterminated in the previous serial, so
Yeah.
But it wanted to.
Yeah.
It really, really wanted to.
that's
It
true.
really wanted to.
This one
It
probably
was
really wanted to
shaking with
too, but he
rage.
got very urgent information and needed a bolt.
No, it was more along the lines of the fact that he was a captive that they were taking for processing, and what they needed was more Robo Men as they kept dying. That was the only reason the Doctor lived. But here, that would have died. I could have seen them trying to call the first guys on the Mary Celeste to stop, but the cabin boy, which had like a good 20, 30 seconds staggering around the
Yeah,
deck
he
before
should
he
have been
fell out,
shot.
he should have been
Was,
killed.
was that the one the Dalek kept saying, "Do not run, do not move," and he kept running away?
Yes.
Yeah,
And then one of them fell off board chasing after him.
Yeah. That was kind of ridiculous. That
I
they
will admit
kind of
that
they
the falling off
defanged the
board was a little
Daleks
too
for
much.
that episode.
I will admit that falling off the Mary Celeste was a little bit much for a Dalek.
Yeah. I didn't even understand how it just kind of rolled off of the Mary Celeste.
It was chasing the guy too fast, as I think what they were
Yeah.
aiming for, but didn't succeed at portraying.
It would have been
You know what it is?
it would have
These were
been
cosplayers that stole a time machine and
it would have been
wanted to be Daleks.
it would have been more interesting if he was chasing it after and you saw the camera at one angle and then the camera tilted, like the ship lurched, and the Dalek fell
Right.
off.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been believable. But as it was just comedically dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And it really kind of turned the Daleks from a threat to incompetent boobs. I mean, seriously, if they'd had Davros at the time, you would have had Davros like Dr. Claw going, "You incompetent morons,"
He would have been frothing at the mouth, literally,
Yeah.
probably.
So, what did Tim not like about it?
Tim mentions that he found Vicky kind of annoying at times.
Yes.
But he also says it was fortunate the story didn't focus on her all that much.
Mm-hmm.
She was a bit of a she was just a bit of a goofball in this, a bit of a fuck up, really.
Mm-hmm.
She seems like every time she was doing something, she couldn't do it right.
Especially the first episode.
The first episode, hitting Ian on the head, pausing when they were fleeing into the Daleks while they were distracting to tell Dracula to run.
Again, she thought that the guy might have been an actor.
No, she thought it was Dracula, because they all thought they were actually dealing with
That's right.
stuff.
The doctor thought they were in the subconscious, and everybody else thought they were in a real haunted house.
Yeah, it was kind of.
And it turns out to be a kind of animatronic show, I guess.
Something like
Yes.
that. Yeah, it was a
And
robotic show. It was a disabled
Dracula and
robotic
Frankenstein here are essentially the 1960s take on Freddy Fazbear.
Show. It was actually this was 1960s doing 1990s, because it actually, when it goes outside, shows that it's for it's like Frankenstein's mansion or Frankenstein's laboratory for the Festival of Ghana in 1996, and then it says
96,
closed.
huh.
Yeah.
I didn't see a date on that. Funny that.
Oh, yep. Yep, it was right there, 1996 Festival of Ghana, and then it had a sign over it that said closed.
But I take it you didn't get my Freddy Fazbear reference.
No, I don't.
Ever heard of Five Nights at Freddy's?
I've heard of it. I've never dealt with it.
Does not seem to be related at all. I mean, that's a haunted Chuck E. Cheese.
Well, essentially, the basic idea is that the animatronics act up and actually act on their own and start attacking people, and that's more or less what happens here. Is, as far as I'm aware, the Frankenstein, the Dracula, and the other weird woman thing that we saw are supposed to be animatronics, and now they're acting on their own to the point that they actually attack Daleks.
They're not. They don't. The Dracula is doing exactly what the Dracula is supposed to do. The lady screaming is doing exactly what the lady screaming is supposed to do, and the Frankenstein only starts attacking stuff because the Dalek exterminated it enough to make it go haywire.
Well, the Dracula also starts doing more than what it's supposed to do too, so as
Yeah,
far as I'm
it does
concerned,
start
it's still
approaching
animatronics
them
going
and
on a
stuff.
rampage. Which is probably why it was closed down in the first place.
No, I think it was because the Daleks broke something in them when they kept exterminating.
Yeah, I honestly think that's what it was as well.
Mm.
It's robot. It's hot robot on robot action.
Ooh.
More than once in this serial.
I did not need that image stuck in my. I did not need that image stuck in my head, Aaron.
I don't know. How does a
Yeah,
Dalek fertilize one
let's
of those
move on.
mechanoids?
Aaron compounds that image.
And Dalek mounts mechanoid, and mechanoid mounts Dalek. It's good to be there.
Anyway, where are we in our
Tim, we just mentioned Tim, what Tim didn't like.
Baby.
Specific scene that you like.
No.
And that's that, right?
And yes, by the way, people, we are actually rated M for mature.
That's okay. There's only one person watching.
Ouch.
We do have YouTube and Mixcloud.
All right, so Matt, scene that you liked. Specific scene only.
Specific scene. Oh, there's actually quite a few decent ones. I think the one that still sticks with me is the Frankenstein monster flipping the Dalek.
All right.
It's gotta be a hell of an animatronic to do that.
All right, Bill.
I am going to go with the Mary Celeste because I am a morbid bastard.
All right, Aaron.
I'm going with the Daleks fighting the mechanoids.
Damn it! I can never get through this without somebody taking mine.
Oh, it was either that or the what do you call it, Alabama man.
Okay.
He was fun.
I don't know.
I liked the mechanoid scene as well. I liked the way it was choreographed.
Mm-hmm.
I guess then I'm going to go for one of my favorite was the time-space visualizer scene in the beginning.
Mm.
All
right. So what did Tim like, or did he not give that?
Tim described his favorite scene as actually, let's see, since Matt basically took his first choice and he did give a second, that would be the Empire State Building.
Okay. The Alabama
which
man.
he didn't really elaborate anymore on. Although I do have to say, on a personal level, I do say that when Americans appear in Doctor Who, they tend to annoy the crap out of me.
Yeah,
at least in class
the Alabama man didn't annoy me as much as the tour guide.
Yeah, the tour guide who sounded like he was going to go to Muggsy.
He sounded like he kept going between New Yorker and, or like Lower Bronx and Eastern Europe. It was bad. So, Matt, scene you didn't
You
like.
sounded like a cab driver, is what you're saying.
Scene I didn't like. Let's all get attacked by the octopus Muppets.
The
Because
Meyer
this is
Beast?
scary, right? Yeah.
The Maya Beasts.
Like I said, the only thing missing was tossing Bela Lugosi in there and having Bela Lugosi try to fake that the octopus was attacking him. To which I will say that tentacles were better, but the actual Maya beasts themselves were really lackluster and laughable.
All right. Bill.
I'm going to go with when they reveal that it was an amusement park that just beat the crap out of the Daleks.
I actually liked that. It was most of the rest of it I didn't.
Every time I see that, I'm like, what? Really? These animatronics just beat the hell out of these, interstellar killing machines?
And I will show you another clip of Freddy Fazbear.
So, Aaron, what didn't you like? Scene.
I didn't like the scene with Ian fighting the doctor in the marsh.
Oh yeah.
It was.
That came off
I mean,
as a bit awkward.
I understand the switch, and I do like kind of the payoff of it. Like he really was fighting the doctor, and I was like, "Oh shit, you almost killed this old man." But no, it's the fight itself is kind of awkward, and he can't really. It wasn't very well choreographed, I guess. It kind of felt weird. Like they were trying to
Are
hurt
you
each
saying
other.
that William Hartnell was not great at action scenes?
Yeah, I'm disappointed, William Hartnell. How dare you? How dare you? He needs to be like David Carradine.
How dare you be in your late 50s and look like you're in your late 60s and not be good at action?
I thought you were a war hero. Oh no, never mind. I just played one.
Okay,
But
so
yeah.
Scene I didn't like. Oh God. Crap. My problem is the scenes I didn't like. I kind of tuned out.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way.
I guess the in the beginning where everybody just kind of runs off on their own. You see the doctor and Barbara basically sunbathing. Meanwhile, Vicky and Ian just kind of run off in the middle of nowhere and get themselves lost. It just kind of felt like, wow, no planning there.
They just wanted to go off and play in the chat.
Yeah, it's like you guys have been doing this for 2 years now. You would have thought you would have learned the first rule of don't wander off.
Well, they were at least given a device to help them get back to the TARDIS if they did get lost.
Fat lot of good it did them.
Well, Fat Lad did them when the guy who's holding it got hit in the head.
Yeah, they had actually landed in Pitcher, Oklahoma, the most toxic city in the world. They're playing in the lead chat from the lead mining.
Anyway, what did Tim not like?
Tim says that it's a stretch, but he would call that the scene where everyone is sleeping kind of dull.
Which scene was everyone is sleeping?
I'm
they're in the cave.
Fourth
I'm
episode,
thinking it's
I think.
something around the first episode, but I might be wrong.
No, fourth episode.
No, it's towards the end.
Okay.
Like the end of the fourth episode.
It must have been during the part of it that I started tuning out.
I don't remember them walking through a poppy field, so I'm really not sure.
They were all sleeping in that cave before the mechanoid came down and saved them when the docs came out next morning.
Yeah.
It was a little obviously slow, but it was obviously for setup.
You got a picture of it on there.
No, Poppy was apparently what Terry Nation was on at the time. Or something a little stronger than that, maybe. Because The Chase, this is the serial that Terry Nation discovered drugs.
Well, it does start off with the Beatles. I mean, I guess he was kind of telegraphing that fact.
I'm not even sure Terry Nation wrote that part. Let's see. Dennis Spooner was the script editor. So, I think he had just taken over.
Which also explains the comedic tone of it, because he wrote a lot of the historical comedies in this era.
Yeah, he this was actually his last outing as script editor, because he started in The Rescue, which was Vicky's first episode.
So that's what, like 3 or 4 serials, maybe 5 at the most, as script editor?
If he had continued on, it really would have gone the way of Lost in Space.
Probably would have.
And probably would have gotten canceled when the campy phase of television ended.
Mm-hmm.
Like Lost in Space and Batman did.
And of course, the guy that replaced him as script editor started going as dark as Doctor Who could possibly go.
Yeah. Well, Dennis Spooner took over from David Whittaker, who was used to basically taking Terry Nation's work and editing it up. So one must wonder what Terry Nation's original script was like. And the follower was Donald Tosh. And Donald Tosh basically started with the Time Meddler and went through the massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve.
Yeah. Bringing it from the point of pretty much grinding the Doctor as dark as it could go.
And then Gary Davis took over. Mm-hmm. And Gary Davis was, I believe, script editor through like most of the second Doctor.
I think it was through season 5, or at least the beginning of season 5.
He doesn't actually say.
Let me see.
I'd be a little bit off topic.
I'm filling 2 minutes, Matt. But because, after him was Terrence Dix, and Terrence Dix was a big third Doctor editor. Mm. And then Holmes, which was third and fourth. Anyway.
Yeah.
So it looks like Dennis Spooner is our camp director. He's probably the one doing drugs. And he was a big children's TV. What else was he known for? Oh God!
Waiting for it.
So Dennis Spooner was very involved in Gary Anderson series, including Thunderbirds. If you're not familiar with Thunderbirds, it's a action-adventure puppet television series for children. He also was involved in the shows UFO and Space 1999, which were also kind of that campy things happening in the far-off future of 1980. Although Space 1999, I think, became more drama. But still, UFO was pretty campy if you watched the opening.
I see one of those broken bits on the Dalek that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it now.
Yeah, ouch. It's like it broke when they were bolting it on there or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's now 1:45, so it is time for our final thoughts.
Yeah.
And I will start with Matt.
Is it campy? Yes. Is it a little over the top? At times. But overall, I still think this was a pretty solid story. I think most of the time, the Daleks are conceived as a real threat, and do live up to that more than a couple of times. However, that being said, they do fail at killing some people that we would have liked to have seen killed, or in normal Dalek behavior would have had killed. But they also come up with a few ingenious ideas, and the constant changing of interesting locations also helps keep the interest going in this particular story, I think, too. So overall, I can't rate this too badly, but I definitely enjoyed it, and I definitely kept my attention today.
All right, Bill.
I'm going to say, well, is this the best Dalek story of all time? It's definitely not. But it is part of a string of serials in which essentially Terry Nation is told to do something different with the Daleks each time, and it definitely succeeds in that. This episode does stand apart from any other Dalek episode. I am glad that it's not repeated, but as a one-time serial, it's enjoyable and does what it's aiming to do without going so far off the beaten path that you can't accept it as Doctor Who. So because of that, it does rate a positive overall from me.
All right, Aaron.
I enjoyed this pretty well. It reminded me greatly of actually something that I'd see on Star Trek. Really, it kind of reminded me of a Star Trek episode. What with the adventure and the action, kind of played up a little bit more. It's not exactly the most. Well, it's pretty much a very simple storyline. He's being chased through space by the Daleks, and I thought, it fulfilled its promise of showing us that. So, yeah, I was pretty happy with it.
All right. I will wait for Tim to start after me. I kind of felt that there was a lot in this particular serial that could have been made better. It was, they probably had their pretty basic Terry Nation script, which meant that a lot of the work was done by the script editor, who decided to play it for laughs rather than play it for serious effect, like most other Dalek serials. And as a result, it really feels like the threat level of though all the characters are reacting like they're a serious threat, the actual threat level of the Daleks is kind of toned down. They come off as goofballs rather than the menace that they're supposed to be. And it just it makes it detract a little in my eyes. So go ahead and read Tim's.
Well, Tim kind of lumped his final thoughts in with his score, but he does mention that he gives it the Sheridan Uber Cool Golden Seal of Excellence, which I guess is the new high mark.
So he liked it, huh?
Apparently he liked it a lot.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and go to our scores. Matt?
Again, not perfect. There are a few little flaws here and there, but I think the vast majority of it still well overpowers it. So I'd say that's above average. So that would be about a 4.
4 flat.
Yep.
You gave Invasion of Earth a 4.5. So.
So
All
yeah,
right.
the Invasion of Earth is a little bit better than this. It was just a little shy of perfect.
All right, Bill.
I'm actually going to go the same. I gave the Daleks a 3.5, Invasion of Earth a 4.5, and I'd probably put this in between the two, so I'll give it a 4 as well.
All right. Aaron, you've gave the last two serials a 4.0. How do you feel about this one?
This one I'm going to go with about a 3, I'd say.
A 3 flat?
3 flat.
All right. I have given the last one a 4 and the Invasion of Earth a 4.5. I'm actually going to have to give this one a 3.5 because it really did not thrill me as much as it did kind of made me feel kind of let down. There were some funny parts, but no. So that gets us to Tim's score, and as you can guess, Tim gave this one a 5.0.
Of course.
Which breaks his string of 2 serials in a row that he did not give a 5.0 to.
we should put a sign on the door. X days since a 5 was given.
X days since Tim gives something a 5.0.
That puts the average for today's episode at a 3.9.
On par with the Mind Dropper. Oh, no, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the core, not the actual. So it puts it on par with Into the Dalek, Blink, and The Next Doctor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Blink is not bad company to be in.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not bad company at all.
I think it's a little bit skewed by that 5, but then again, there were also a 3, so kind of
Yeah.
evens it out.
Yeah, I need
Just
to
curious
update the
what
master sheet.
I'm curious what the total would be without that 5. Let me see here. Without the 5, it was a 3.625, which
You
would put it.
also have to cut the 3 if you cut the 5, because that's generally what happens.
Okay,
when
so
you,
if we cut the 2 outliers, that would put it at 3.8, which doesn't lower it all that much.
No, but yeah, when you cut a score, you cut the top and the bottom.
Mm.
So.
Well, I was just
So
looking at it.
that's-
4 of them were within, a half of the median. Well, I'm not sure which. Well, the median, yeah. Most of them were close to a 3.5. That one was the farthest from a 3.5. But anyway, that's where we are.
So yep, that gives us a 3.9 for the chase. So that will do it for tonight's podcast. Bill?
Yeah. And if you enjoy listening to us, please consider subscribing on Twitch, YouTube, and Mixcloud to an Unearthly Podcast, as well as following us on on social media such as Facebook and Twitter, which also includes special announcements. If you wish to contribute and help us move along, you can join us on patreon.com/Unearthly Podcast. And of course, don't forget to join us next week for the Daleks Master Plan by, you guessed it, Terry Nation, which we may also cover Mission to the Unknown by Derek Martinez.
That depends on if any of us are awake after.
By Terry Nation as well. I was looking at the director, and I didn't hear what you said.
Yeah, that depends on if any of us are awake after Master Plan. It is the longest Doctor Who serial for which there is very little of it intact, except audio.
Oh my! I hope I find a good copy.
I plan to split it into. I plan to split it into 4-episode chunks myself.
Yeah, it's gonna be a hard listen.
I've never seen through most of it, but yeah, I think I remember also passing out for parts.
If you're planning on paying attention to the plot, you can skip episode 7. That was the Christmas special.
And on that bombshell.
All right, I think we're done. So,
Yep.
We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Provided any of us are still awake.
Good night if we're even awake then.